What you need to stop doing on your fat loss journey. Okay, so I know most of you love to use the scale as a way in which to measure progress. The problem with this is that there's tons of other ways in which you can monitor progress. I will tell you that our clients use all different types. Okay, so we have some clients that utilize different methods like progress pictures combined with measurements and weight. Okay, they will also use just measurements and just progress pictures and no scale weight, and they'll go with how they feel. We have other clients that tend to use energy levels, even their digestion, and also too, like they'll talk about like how their clothes fit, their mindset around food, their narrative around food. That is all, things that they've used to measure progress. Some people are just like, man, I'm sleeping better. And, like my stress management is better. All of these things are definite ways to measure progress beyond the scale. Because the thing is that a lot of these measurements or these things that are progressing or improving will by default eventually add up to you probably being in a calorie deficit and maintaining and adhering to that. Because after all, that's what's required for fat loss to occur. So, the point I'm trying to make is that you are going to get frustrated. In fact, I had a client that checked in just recently and she's super frustrated because she's like, I'm doing all the things. I'm dialing in my nutrition and I'm not seeing the scale move, but she forgets to zoom out. She forgets to understand that, listen, you know what? If your clothes are fitting better and if your measurements are changing, you are changing your body composition. It's not just the scale. And that scale can be super, super frustrating. Okay. So think about things like, how your clothes fit and if your energy levels are improving, because guess what? If your energy is improving, you're going to move more. And by default, that could add up substantially for your energy expenditure. And let's not forget how movement actually helps improve your stress too, right? So if like you're someone who's trying to manage your stress and you're having a difficult time moving your body. So now you've done not only your stress management, by default, you're using movement. Now you have greater energy expenditure. And again, the scale won't necessarily dictate that. It's not going to tell you that those are improvements. You're just going to look at the scale, it's not moving, and you're going to be very, very frustrated. There are many ways, and I think that it's really, really important to look for a little bit more of a reliable method for you. But you have to come up with that method. This is not something that I think any coach should just say to somebody and say, hey, listen, you have to do this. In fact, I had a client that asked me if she is going to weigh herself, what is the best approach? And I had mentioned to her, listen, if you want to do weight, we can't rely just on one day, because that one day is just like 1 out of 7 days in the week that could give us, some feedback, but it's not displaying the fluctuations. And also too, that one day is just one day out of the week. Like, let's talk about that, right? So yeah, my recommendations for her were to weigh herself consistently every day at the same time, and we'll take the average. And even when we look at the graph, we can see where those fluctuations are, because maybe some of those, they actually, could be, they could correlate to, days of like overfeeding or menstrual cycle. And we might see these peaks come up. We might see someone who has, had a very, very high intake of carbohydrates and a lot more processed foods, and their weight has gone up the next day. Okay, well, that's fine. It doesn't mean that you've gained body fat. What it means is that maybe you've got some, extra glycogen and sodium, you're holding on some water weight, maybe even more food in the digestive system. So you can see how relying solely on the scale for your fat loss journey can be very frustrating and likely not something that you should absolutely rely upon, okay? So those of you out there who rely solely on that, it's time to really think about this. Is this positively impacting the outcome? Is staring at that scale on a regular basis ideal, or could you look at other methods in which to measure your progress? Okay, so if you're dialing things in and you're feeling frustrated because the scale is not moving, it is absolutely time to zoom out and ask yourself more questions. Are your clothes fitting better? Are your measurements changing? Are your progress pictures changing? How are your energy levels? What is your stress like? Are you sleeping better? Because like I mentioned before, when you look at that, when you look at some of these habits, behaviors, they will by default likely help you establish, adhere, and become more consistent with your calorie deficit, which will mean that over time, you're likely going to be losing fat. So again, you need to stop focusing solely on the scale if you're on a fat loss journey.